So Turkish families, traditionally, of which I'm not suffering from generally, because my Turkish family, my Turkish half is not particularly traditional, but my grandmother is. There are points where she tries to pair me up with a Turkish girl over in Istanbul, despite me living in England. And do you have a daughter is me kind of thinking how a conversation goes when she meets a new person, a new family, a new friend or something, and she learns that they have a daughter, a single daughter of marrying age. She's kind of, do you have a daughter?
Hi, I'm your host Andai, and welcome to Sountracks, the podcast where we share the personal connections we have with music and how these connections influence our experiences, our emotions, and our memories. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for trusting me with your time. Today, I have a special guest. This is Jonjan. And I've told you guys before that I went to So Far in February, and he was one of the artists that were playing. And you know when you see someone, right, they're doing something, A, that they really seem to enjoy, and B, they're really good at it. So, like, I've seen people play guitar everywhere, all the time, right? But this guy plays the guitar. I've never seen anyone play the guitar like this man plays the guitar. So I'll try to put a snippet in from the concert in there, but also just go find him on Instagram, find him on the YouTube, go on Spotify and check him out. He's like a one-man band. You know what I mean? Like, you know when you're a musician and you sing and then you have guitars and you have everything, there's lots of people. He's like that for himself. Do you understand what that means? So you should definitely go check him out, Jonjan. Thank you for being here.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So yeah, how's it been going? How are you today?
It's cool. It's a quiet year, leading into what is looking like a very busy summer. That being said, I started the year in Peru. I was performing around Peru for all of January, and so I can't complain too much. If you've never been to Peru, I really recommend it.
I have never been.
Fantastic place, beautiful people, and a fantastic culture, and fantastic cuisine, and fantastic archaeology, and amazing music.
That's great. One of the songs of yours that I've had on repeat is Strings Attached. For a while. I know that came out in 2020, the album itself.
Yeah, it was last year, 2023, yeah.
But you made it in 2020, I believe.
Yeah, it was recorded, yeah.
What was the process like of making that album and kind of putting all those songs together in that kind of curation?
It was a long time coming. Music has paid for my life for over 10 years. Yet it took more than 10 years for me to feel in the right moment to put an album out and to commit those tracks to recording and everything like that. The recording of them was across 3 days. It was 9 tracks in 3 days on a boat studio in the middle of the Thames, which is fantastic. It's a beautiful studio. And that happened very fast. The nature of the style I play is very organic. So it was just kind of like, let's try a take, try another take, try one more take. Okay, which was the best take? Let's go with that. There was no overdubs, nothing. It was very, very organic. So that process was really fast, the actual getting in there, recording. The editing and the mixing took a while. We had lots of different microphones, and because it's just solo guitar, we could pinpoint, like just give so much attention to what sounds we want to convey through the microphones chosen. So that took a while. Mixing the bass, especially, I'm a very percussive player, and from this one instrument should be bass sounds, kind of melody sounds, chordal sounds, other percussive sounds, and so it's a lot to ask from one instrument source, from one sound source. So that took a while to mix, and I think definitely there was because this is my first ever release. It's taken more than 10 years for me to kind of get to a point like this. I definitely felt like, well, it's taken 10 years. I can wait a couple of months. I can wait a couple more months. And so I would listen to the mixes, come back to it, leave it for a couple of months, come back, listen, have a little talk with the engineer, change a few bits and bobs. The final process was taking it to Abbey Road to be mastered at Abbey Road. Oh. At that level, at that process, things went quite fast from there until the marketing phase. And then everything crumbles because I'm terrible at the marketing. But yeah.
That's the thing about, I think, these days where you have to be the creative but also be the marketer and all that stuff.
And the booking agent, yeah.
Not everyone has that in them, and I think it's a lot to ask. And so you've been doing this for 10 years, and I always like to ask, like, how was it maybe talking your parents through your ambition to do music as a full-time thing? When I was in high school, I really loved to sing, right? So I told my dad that I wanted to do singing lessons, right? And he let me for a bit. And then after a while, he was like, yeah, I need you to stop. I'm like, why? He's like, he wanted me to get my black belt first. So I did Kajiri karate as a kid. And he was like, you need to focus on one thing. And I'm deciding for you that your thing is karate and not singing.
Ooh.
So he made me stop. And I was really emotional and really upset about it. He was like, what are you going to do with it? There's nothing you can do with it. You know what I mean? But now I feel like I have this talent that I could have done, not professional in, but I would have been a better singer, a better artist if I had stuck to it. And my parents were just not in the creative field. Like we were not allowed to do creative things. So I think 2 years ago, my dad bought my sister a guitar. And I was like, If it was me, like he was very adamant on not buying us instruments because they take up time from studying. And then now as parents get older, he bought my sister a guitar. And I'm just like, so yeah, what is that conversation with your parents to be like, this is what I want to do?
Well, firstly, I'm very interested in the mindset of a parent who very rightly wants to enrich a child's life with something that fosters discipline, such as karate or such as an instrument. Mm-hmm. So that's very interesting to me that one was chosen for you, apparently.
I loved it, but I wanted to do both, and he just thought that it's too much headspace when I should be focusing on academics. So just pick one, and he picked one for me. I think that was the important one. I've been doing it longer, to be fair. I was doing karate since I was like 7. At the time I was like 14, 15, and he was just like, yeah, nah.
Interesting. Just really quickly on that topic, I would say even if someone doesn't become a professional singer or a professional bassoon player or whatever instrument they play as a child, it does foster the discipline and the relentlessness of practice and the learning process that seeps into adulthood, that actually coming back to something and showing repetitious, maybe not passion, but just time put into something, it does reap rewards. And I think that can seep into so many different aspects of a person's life. It doesn't mean they have to be a professional guitarist or I don't know, singer or something like that, but that skill, that mindset, I think that can be so beneficial in so many different aspects of life. In the same way that studying karate, I'm sure would be as well, because you're doing the same movements and you kind of lock in those movements and putting the time in. Interesting kind of argument to be made there.
On both sides, yeah.
I completely forgot your question.
Your
was
parents.
About my parents.
Yeah.
So my father is a doctor over in Turkey.
Same. What kind of doctor?
He's like emergency, kind of generally, emergency.
My dad's a gynecologist.
Ah, okay, cool. Dad was, of course he wanted me to be a doctor, and he said on many occasions, your temperament, your approach both to people and to logical problems would very much suit medicine, and I think you'd be a great doctor. And I kind of said to him, I can be a doctor after I do this guitar thing. So, and he kind of said, okay, just make sure you're damn good. Like, make sure you practice, make sure you put everything into it, because it's not going to be easy. I feel, and same with my mum, they were very, very, very supportive, and I was incredibly lucky to have parents like that. And I realised that, especially as I grow older. Equally, I can see it from their side as well, from my dad's side, being worried about future income and stuff like that. So, I feel very lucky, but I can also totally see from a very logical point of view why it might, not worry, but kind of create questions in a parent, potentially. I think to be very frank with you, they threw me into flute lessons to start with at age 8. I sucked. That was terrible. Really, really bad. They then put me on the piano for age 10. I sucked. That was terrible. And then they were like, okay, he's done. He's not musical. We've tried. We've done our parent duty. We've tried. They also threw me into like acting lessons, and I sucked. That was terrible. So, they're like, okay, we tried lots of things. Some things stick, some things might not. But then of my own accord, I heard Carlos Santana on the electric guitar, and I kind of said, what's that sound? What's that music? And kind of from there, it just naturally was a natural interest, a natural passion for it. And it was undeniable. And once I had my hands on a guitar, things moved forward very fast.
Wow.
So, it just kind of just went from there quite naturally.
So you heard Carlos Santana and you're just like, what is this?
Yeah.
That kind of first initial, like, what is this?
Yeah, I think it's his music has got lots of Latin percussion going on. It's Latin rock, and it's got a searing lead guitar, and the voice of his guitar is so memorable. It's so unique, and that all sat with me so beautifully. Like, I loved the percussion going on. I was a very percussive kid. I was always tapping on tables and stuff like that. So the Latin percussion stuff was satiated in me from his kind of orchestra, and then his lead stuff just took me. It just was really infectious to me, really interesting. And then when I saw concerts of his, like on DVD and stuff, there were dancers on stage. There was a huge brass section. There was a huge percussion orchestra. The audience were going wild, and not just like in a rock concert wild. The audience were dancing. They were up. They were kind of celebrating. It was the energy of a rock concert, but the kind of passion and the groove of like a huge salsa kind of event. So I loved it. I was kind of sold on that. I thought that was so cool. So and at the center of it was this dude playing searing electric guitar. So I was like, man, I want to be that guy. Yeah.
So you went from electric to acoustic. So why did you make the choice to stick to acoustic?
I don't want to say it as blankly as I started making much more money, but it became obvious that, number one, it was something I could do solo without requiring other musicians around me. I could earn reliable money, and I think it massaged my ego to be able to have all the attention on me, if I'm honest with you.
That makes sense.
And if you said to 16-year-old Jonjan that I don't really play electric guitar much at all these days, and I'm nearly purely an acoustic player, he would have been shocked, I think, because at that age I thought I was going to be I don't know, a blues guitarist or something like that, lead guy on electric. But yeah, it's interesting what direction things go.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, cool. Don't want to spend too much time. I have this habit of just poking people for information, and then I end up having a 2-hour video I have to edit.
Yeah, totally. I waffle. So.
No, it's not you, it's me. I'm the problem. Let's just go into our game. So the game is called Word Association. I'll give you a word and you give me a song, whether it is in the lyrics or not, just like whatever comes to mind first thought.
Can
right?
be anyone's song, any era.
Any era, any song, right? Your first word is Istanbul.
Istanbul. Okay, cool. The first one that came to mind is my own track called Mental State, which was written in Istanbul. It was on a balcony, and it was during the Gezi Park protests, and which was kind of like a public versus the government kind of era of Turkey. And the public were kind of rioting against the government, and it was a huge proof of concept, I think, for the government to show that they can hold power over the public to a dictatorial level. And the track Mental State from myself was written about my mental state during that time, but also how mental this state, i.e. this government, is. And so, yeah, that specifically reminds me of that, but it feels very narcissistic for me to pick my own track, but apologies.
No, that is the first song that came to your mind, so that's fine. Your second word is family.
Family, interesting. I think... this is so weird. Celebrate Good Times comes to mind for me.
Who's that by? By Kool and the Gang.
Oh, it's by Kool and the Gang.
Gang.
Okay, yeah, cool. I think there's family mentioned in there at some point.
So it's the lyrics. It's not connected to anything. Like
maybe so. Yeah. Weird. That is just swimming in my head. I haven't listened to that track for so long.
And I assume you have two kind of. So you have family in the UK and then you have family in Turkey.
Yeah.
Is there kind of music where you kind of attribute this kind of music to your Turkish family and this kind of music to your English family?
Actually, there were quite a lot of crossovers. Weirdly, the classic rock band Pink Floyd I associate a lot with my dad. Of course, they're a very British band, but my dad grew up listening to them and loving them before he could even talk English. He loved the music, so he didn't know what the lyrics were, but he loved the music, and that's very, very typical of Turkish rock fans. They love Pink Floyd.
Okay.
It's very dramatic, kind of quite politically driven, philosophical kind of rock kind of stuff with really emotive lyrics. He didn't understand the lyrics at the time, but the music is very dramatic, and that's very emblematic of Turkish music, I would say. So yeah, another one that popped into my head there would probably be the band Pink Floyd and probably the track Hey You.
Okay.
which my dad loved. And once he learnt the lyrics, or learnt to understand the lyrics, he fell deeper in love with the band. And so I grew up with a lot of Pink Floyd being played as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Your next word is love.
Love. Ooh. I think the first one that comes to mind for me is Santana's Corazón Espinado, which is like, it means my skewered heart. And it's a very, quite typical Latin rock track. It's got an awesome groove, amazing lead playing from Santana all over it. And yeah, it just feels very passionate to me. It's a very passionate, quite energetic kind of, like strained love kind of story, let's say. For me, that's the first that came to mind.
Do you have any kind of like during your own writing process? I know that you don't kind of put out music that is attached to like an emotion, like when you're
Not
writing
so much.
for someone or writing about something. It's very much like you're just there doing what you need to do, and that's what comes out. Do you ever have, like now in your career you don't, but did you before, when you were first kind of at school, write music about people in your life?
No, not really. It was I never. Yeah, the concept of like a love song for someone, or to describe a situation of love. It never really came to me naturally. That my writing never really went in that direction particularly. I think the first thing I remember putting like lyrics to melody, lyrics to music was a rip-off. Yeah, it was a Pink Floyd track rip-off, which was kind of political in its motivation. So some kind of weird communist kind of vibe. Definitely not love. No.
I always find it, like, I find it interesting when other artists say, I wrote the song when my sister or my was going through that. And I think is it just, do you think it's easier when there's words attached, then you can do that kind of thing, versus it's just kind of like your percussion, your instruments, is that what happens, do you think?
I think I look at it more as maybe a soundtrack. So I might see in the distance a couple arguing, and it might not be my lived emotion or my lived experience, but I feel like I want to put a soundtrack to the words that or the emotions that they might be having, without me necessarily having lived it. I think maybe a little bit more like that, from that kind of approach. It doesn't mean that what I write, which obviously has no lyrics, is instrumental. It doesn't mean it doesn't have like passion to me and kind of meaning to me, but I wouldn't directly say it as like, oh, this is about this lived experience of highly emotive nature for me, etc., etc.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah. So we'll move on to song of the week. So my song of the week this week is a Amapiano song by South African artist Gala Tunzini, and it's called Fire Dance. It's just an Amapiano song. I think for me, I've been listening to a lot of Amapiano now versus when I was at home, just because it brings back lots of like nostalgia and home feeling for me when I am here in the UK. So I go to lots of Amapiano festivals, for example, just because there's lots of kinship there, like lots of people who look like me, who enjoy the same kind of music as me, and I find myself gravitating towards that. So even the music that I listen to these days is very much like paying homage to being at home, or that kind of feeling. What's your song of the week?
Firstly, what is an Amapiano?
Oh, you're not piano.
No, I'm so sorry.
What? What do you mean? It's a genre. So Amapiano is a genre that comes out of Southern Africa, right? Most of South Africa. So it comes from a genre of music called Kwaito. So back in the day, before we had what Amapiano is now, we had Kwaito, which is like, I would make it, I describe it very close to like rap music, but not. And then Kwaito met house music, and they kind of blended into this thing that came out of South African townships called Amapiano, and it is lots of vocalists lots of the time. So you have Xhosa, Zulu vocals, but the beats and the music is like infused between. There's a jazz element to it. Let me just play you one. I don't know. Sure. Let me play you this particular song that I'm talking about. Sure. So that's what Amapiano is. Cool. It's a dance genre. It is at the moment having its moment on the global stage where lots of people are paying attention to it, which is lovely for me to see. This artist called Tyler, she's South African. She just won a Grammy off of one song. It went viral on TikTok, but it was has lots of piano fusion to it, and it had people looking in South Africa, which is always great. So let me just play some of it.
I heard the name with piano in that. I assumed it would be something quite soft. Because, from my understanding.
But we don't even know. I think at the beginning there was lots of like piano playing in it. There's like a keyboards and stuff, and then it just kind of emerged into something bigger than that, and hence its name. So that's my piano.
Cool. Nice, thank you. Your question to me was...
So what was your song of the week?
Oh, interesting. My song of the week probably is... I think it's Bad News by Leon Bridges.
Oh, that's a good song.
Which is an awesome track. It's awesome. It's such a good track.
Oh.
On so many levels. It's
you walk to that song and you own the street. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, that's such a good... that's such a good phrase.
You're in there. And it's just you. And his vocals. I love that song.
It's awesome. The production on it is amazing. It's got this simmering kind of groove to it, and it feels effortless. It feels like the track is effortless in its way of just getting into your mind, into your ear, and getting its groove in you.
It gives you an attitude as well. Like, let me come through.
Yeah.
I love a song.
It's like it's a bad week song, but like you're gonna boss it anyway
because it's you. I love that song, and the video as well is a beautiful video.
I haven't seen the video.
It's really good.
Cool.
It's a beautiful song, and Leon's vocals are just so smooth.
Man,
I first heard the first song of his that I heard was River. Take me to the river, I wanna know. Yes. Then I kind of got into that, and then the new Leon is
very cool guy. And great musicians around him, like.
That's a good song. That's a good choice. Cool. We're gonna go into your soundtracks, right? So you send me so many songs, right? You send me a lot, and I put them all in here.
Wow. Okay.
So what I'm hoping is that because you have a few from the same artist, like a lot from the same artist. So what I'm hoping by randomness, we don't get the same artist all the time. Cool. So I want it to be like, as organic as possible, and to be your choice. You know what I mean?
Cool.
So let's kind of just go from there.
Right. So I'm gonna pick one and just.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, George Benson, This Masquerade. So this meant quite a lot to me because I had a jazz guitar teacher when I was maybe 17 at that period where like some people go to college, some people go to what is called sixth form here, but it's before uni, and I had some lessons in the sixth form college with this guy, and I've had one guitar teacher before at that point who was terrible, and I quite quickly like just dropped him, and then I learned by myself for a long period, and then there was this guy teaching like jazz styles at school, and he was completely different approach as a teacher. He was fantastic, amazing player. His name is Dave Austin, and shout out to Dave Austin. Incredible man and incredible teacher. Also incredible player. It's actually very rare, in my opinion, to find a musician who's both a really good player and a good teacher, really good at communicating that talent to foster learning. They're two different things a lot of the time, but this guy had both, 100%, very, very rare. Anyway, he is the guy who introduced me to George Benson, and particularly this track, This Masquerade, on that album, which I think it might be the title of the album as well that it first shows up on, but it's on all George Benson best ofs and stuff like that. Dave brought attention to me how the groove of this track escalates as the track goes on, and he made me listen to the beginning and kind of say, where would you put the dynamics of this track at this point, and then kind of cut to halfway, and like by that point the drummers got more into the groove. There's more playing going on. The bassist is kind of playing a more heavier kind of groove. He's playing less sporadically, more notes. And then as the track goes on, this groove builds and builds and builds, and it gets really, really in the pocket. And it's just so, for me, it was a masterclass from George Benson and from his musicians, from his band, in how to build dynamics through a track. and build groove and escalate groove. As well as that, it's got some incredible typical George Benson playing in there, and like an amazing solo of his where it's very, very vocal. And so that massively reminds me of time appreciating the building of groove and the escalation of groove and dynamics in a track, which for me as a solo player is a huge thing. I'm a solo instrumentalist. I don't have much else. I don't have my bandmates around me to help build those dynamics that they are.
From you.
Yeah, and it's a tool that you have to use, I think. And I think I do employ that quite a lot. I try to employ it in the music that I make. Yeah. So, yeah, big learning opportunity, this Masquerade by George Benson. Awesome
Do you
track.
have any other kind of teachers who you think your style or whatnot, the way you play, fed into that, and you still kind of hear that in the way you play today?
Not necessarily teachers who I had specifically met and kind of went through stuff, and the stuff with Dave, I never would have ever thought that it would be me playing solo, where I actually really appreciate what he taught me, but it massively is. But I would say artists like Rodrigo Gabriela and Raul Midon, where they employ quite a lot of the techniques that I use, they influenced quite a lot as well, and they taught to a certain extent. Yeah, watching videos of them helped me kind of develop what I'd done to an extent. Although I'm still doing something a bit different, but they definitely helped. Yeah, in terms of other players or other direct tutors, not really. I never really came across others, especially in a learning context, doing kind of what I do directly. But of course, you learn a lot from all different sources. Every jam that you have with a musician is a learning opportunity. I spoke about this a little bit before in another kind of thing, but it's really healthy as a musician, or maybe as a person in general, to be in rooms where you are not the best and you're surrounded by people much better than you, because it generally forces you to up your game in lots of different contexts.
Yeah, so that you're not, when you feel like you're the best, sometimes you don't feel like you have the need to learn.
Totally.
And I think when you sit down with people who you yourself feel like, no, this person's really good at what they do, it lights a fire up your ass, but it also at the same time allows you the opportunity to learn from someone, and you become a better artist, a better person just from that, and they like also have the opportunity to learn from you as well. So it's just a very kind of symbiotic relationship, and that's why competition is good. Like learning from other people is good. People shouldn't shy away, and I think that if you are in a room and you're the only person who is, the loudest or the most talented, then surely you're in the wrong room, because that's not a room where you can foster growth.
Yeah,
so completely get that.
Yeah.
Next song.
Cool. Oh, we've got another George Benson, on Broadway, off Broadway, and Give Me the Night. These are all George Benson's kind of more disco-y kind of phase of his career, where disco was a huge thing, especially like during the 70s, obviously. And in groove, they're also masterclasses, but it's also a interesting indication that someone who came from like a jazz background is so adaptable, and how music does change over time. And so someone who kind of came from a quite traditional jazz background was totally able, and credit to him as a musician, he's incredible, was totally able to just throw his hand to something that that was like hot at the time, like disco, funk, that kind of thing. And the production on these tracks is amazing. Give Me the Night, it's so interesting. Back then there was not sub bass didn't exist. So when you put Give Me the Night on now, there's not very much bass on that track at all, and it doesn't need it. It's so groovy. Like it just gets you moving. It just gets you dancing. Another great example of that is Bob Marley's Exodus. Like that track is groovy as hell. That is so groovy, and to the point where the musicianship on that track sounds like it could be a loop. It could be an infinite loop, and it could be like, oh, this is generated. Like, but it sounds so human, but at the same time so in sync, so groovy, and. Yeah, there's bass, for example, missing. There's no sub bass on that at all. Exactly. They didn't have sub bass then, but it doesn't need it. You just have that groove, and these tracks. So Broadway, on Broadway, off Broadway, and Give Me the Night, very indicative of that. The groove on them is unreal.
Yeah, next one.
Hoping for
same. I don't want to George Benson.
I might not.
And if it is, we just put it down to
yeah. It's time for someone else to have some. Okay, cool. Bill Withers, Use Me. Another track with amazing groove. I think a lot of my track choices are very groove based. Use Me is the lyrics are incredible. It's kind of describing how for a lot of us maybe at some points emotionally and in a relationship you might suddenly be aware that actually there's an imbalance in what you are getting out of the relationship and what someone else is getting out. And in this track particularly, in Bill Withers Use Me, he's aware of that and he's like, that's fine. I'm enjoying it, so that's okay. But groove wise, very, very interesting, fantastic use from Bill of his orchestra, of his band, where he's on acoustic guitar, creating a groove with the acoustic guitar, but then there's a full drum kit doing a very, very, very funk-based kind of approach, funk-based groove. And the drummer on this, the opening is absolutely insane. It's one of the best drum openings to me ever, aside from maybe Superstition by Stevie Wonder, which is just like, that was Stevie Wonder playing drums on that.
Was it? Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Yeah. Insane.
Oh, wow.
Insane. A very young Stevie Wonder.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Insane. This is probably second as like one of the most memorable drum openings in like a funk kind of context, or 70s kind of vibe. And it's interesting, you don't really hear acoustic guitar in a funk context so much, but with this track it just fits so well.
Is there a song that when you kind of think about your time in relationships and whatnot that helps you through a difficult relationship or a breakup, or like during a relationship that you're like attached to that?
Maybe. No, I'm spacing on the artist's name. The first one that comes to mind, I'm spacing on the artist's name, but I think the track name is John, or Oh John, and he's a jazz singer, and I'm sure we're going to find it later, and we'll put it up in like a little subtitle or something. And it's actually her. It's a very sexy jazz kind of context, I think, with a really strong double bass in there, and it's her kind of trying to convince the guy to go back to his wife and not stay around, because she's kind of saying, listen, it's not the right time. There will be a right time for us, but you've got stuff to do. You've got a wife to go back to, a good wife to go back to, and you're a good man, and you go back to her, and we'll have our time maybe later if things go in a certain direction with your thing. But right now, you're don't be a bad person in this instance. Exactly. Let things pan out as they will in time. It's a very sexy track. She's got an incredible voice, very, very kind of sultry, kind of female like jazz voice. That was the first thing that came to.
Why that one?
I think I've been not necessarily her, but I've been the other guy in things. Let's say, especially as a traveling, quite free spirit musician. What that represents to some people seems conducive to me being the other guy in relationships where people are not particularly happy. And sometimes that doesn't affect me, and sometimes it does. Yeah, many times it does.
We're human, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so like the it's not a great place to be either way.
Yeah, totally. And it's not something I would ever choose.
Obviously for yourself, because everyone is just looking for a connection, and you don't want to be the other person's other person.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah.
Well, next song.
Okay, Rodrigo y Gabriela, Diablo Rojo, which is Rodrigo y Gabriela. They're a duo. It's a guy and a girl.
Are they still a duo?
Yeah. Cool. They're still going, and then they're killing it. They're amazing. It's two kind of modern flamenco-y kind of players on acoustic Spanish guitars, and they're not strictly playing flamenco style as like traditional, but using a lot of flamenco technique in the same way that I do. And one of them, Gabriela, is very percussive. She's like a drum kit on the guitar, whilst holding down all the rhythm section. And Rodrigo is like a speed demon on like the melodic kind of lead stuff. And together, they are just monstrous. Their sync and the connection they have rhythmically is unreal. And the stuff they create is so energetic, so groovy, so just full of energy. And you are shocked to hear that it's just two guitars, because there's so many sounds coming out, and it's so huge, their sound. And they were a massive prototype for me in developing my sound. I wanted to take like a fraction of the energy that they create together for myself solo. And with them particularly, I love that it's Gabriella, the female, who is the driving force, who is the kind of the rock of the duo in terms of the percussion stuff. I think, maybe stereotypically you might assume, like, because of other acoustic players, nearly all acoustic percussive players are male. But in this duo, it's Gabriella, and she's a monster. Like, people, I cannot, that's my specialism. I cannot do what some of the things she does. I just can't. And the stamina that she has is unreal. To do like the concerts that they do, it's incredible. I've seen them live a couple of times, and every time I hear them, every time I see them, I just amazing, incredible musicians. It flows through them. It's beautiful.
And when was it that you decided that you want to kind of add body percussion and that kind of percussion guitar playing to your playing?
I can't really pinpoint it. I'm not really sure. I think I was always clicking and clapping as a kid. I would say, or tapping on tables and doing this kind of like, I don't want the mics to like clip or anything, but all that kind of stuff. And at some point, that desire to express groove, it bled onto the acoustic guitar when I started playing a bit of acoustic. Around about the same time, I saw Roll Me Don on Jules Holland, which is like it's a BBC music show, and he was using a little bit of percussive guitar technique in an R&B context, and that was really interesting for me. I was kind of okay, that percussion stuff, it can work in a guitar-y context. Okay, it can kind of be its own rhythm section. That's interesting. And then maybe a year later, I saw Rodrigo and Gabriela doing their thing. I was like, wow, okay, this is really cool. This is like the Latin kind of Spanish guitar stuff that I'm really into. But then all acoustic, but sounding huge like a metal band or something. It was incredible. So yeah, I somewhere around then, and those ages would have probably been like 17, 18, 19, maybe, something like that. I would say it was 2021 that I started playing that style and writing in that style, let's say. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, next song.
Stevie Ray Vaughan, Texas Flood. So I was talking about this player recently, and Stevie Ray Vaughan is an incredible electric guitarist. He's a blues guitarist, and his voice on the guitar and the way he approaches guitar playing is it was wholly unique at that time, and he set a standard and a kind of guitar voice, a guitar style that permeated even to this day. An artist like John Mayer is a direct descendant of Stevie Ray Vaughan's playing, and he will be the first to admit it, in so many ways. In the role of the guitar, the kind of the voice of the guitar, even the style of guitar that is being played. And Stevie Ray Vaughan, like most fantastic players, as soon as he plays a note, okay, yeah, that's Stevie. That note choice and the way he's hit that note is so identifiable. And there was a point as an electric guitarist where I couldn't listen to other guitarists. I was like, everything sounds so thin compared to this guy's playing, because his voice was so... Again, when I say voice, I literally mean the way the guitar sounds was so thick, so like encompassing. I was like, man, this, like, I don't know. I remember thinking Sweet Home Alabama was like, the guitars on there sound so thin. They sound so widdly compared to this guy. Like, I can't listen to that now. That's rubbish. And I kind of got out of that phase after a while. But what stuck with me was Stevie Ray's passion when he plays. He's like, it's all or nothing. He's playing with absolute soul, and with like sweat dripping down from him, his eyes probably crying and stuff like that in deep pain, because he also used really thick strings, and so literally to bend the string with, like, you can see it. Which, for blues it completely fits. It's like he's straight like groaning, but yeah, I tried to capture that passion that he had in my playing now, even though it's a completely different style and everything, his stage persona and his energy on stage and coming through the instrument, completely unique, and even today permeates through artists now. Yeah.
And I know that, you talked about how you tried to play the flute, the piano, and just it didn't work.
Yeah.
So if there was another instrument that isn't guitar that you would want, or you would say, cool, this is what you do now, this is your thing, which one would it be?
Saxophone.
Ooh,
100% saxophone on so many levels.
Okay, now I see that.
It's a sexy instrument.
Oh, I
one.
see that.
You don't need any cables, you don't need any amplifiers, you don't need a PA system if you want to be heard by more than 3 people in a room. It's pretty damn portable, still more portable than a guitar. If you need to practice really quietly, you can get things these days to kind of encompass the sax and mute it and make it really quiet. And I think it's more mobile while you're playing. When I play the acoustic stuff, I'm 99% of the time sitting down. I'm planted, and that's cool in some ways, and it creates that kind of the stereotype of like the maybe flamenco guitarist, on a chair or something like that. And I like that. I like that. And percussively, when I'm playing my instrument in the way that I do, I actually need it kind of to be quite planted, because I'm doing all those percussive hits. I need the guitar to be able to sit kind of in place. So for me, standing playing that style isn't so handy, isn't so good. But with the sax, just the ability to kind of walk around.
Yeah.
So 100% sax.
Oh, nice.
100% sax.
I see that for you. Next song.
Santana, Africa Bamba. It's an amazing. I'm so guitar orientated. But yeah, his lead playing on that is incredible. The general, like the recording quality, the production, or the Latin orchestra that is involved in that. It's awesome. He also plays some Spanish classical on there in between, then switching to electric, and he kind of does a call and response, let's say, between some Spanish classical and then him on electric, and the communication between those two elements is fantastic. This reminds me of, it's his Supernatural album, and that was, I guess, 1999. I would have probably got on that around 2002 to 2004, where that would have been the soundtrack to my summers for there, and still now. When music reminds you of a certain area of your life, for me, that's totally that. That's young Jonjan first learning the guitar, hearing his sound, and wanting to sound like him. Totally.
And like, where would you? What elements of summer? Like, obviously, there's a learning the guitar part, but like outside the guitar tutorials, I guess. Like, what about that music brings you back to summer?
I think it being Latin music, and very dance orientated with a groove that just makes you move. It was so different than the British music at the time that was like, that my peers were listening to. The people around me in school were like saying, oh, have you heard this and that, or something like that. I don't know, what can I think, like maybe the White Stripes or Franz. That's a great example. Franz Ferdinand were really big at that time. British band, very like, to me, very spiky, very like, I don't know, like, this is the groove. It's just like this. And then Santana stuff was like, there's this Latin percussion going on. In my mind, probably way too much, I'm seeing kind of women dancing and this kind of thing, and that groove there, from so much more creativity to me, so much more of life in the music than something like Franz Ferdinand, which is what the main bands were at the time. That was that era of music at my school, let's say. It was just way cooler to me. Okay. Although I was the uncool one, because no one else was into Santana. But yeah,
you had your own lane, I guess.
Yeah. I can say that now, but at the time I was, if I put on that Latin stuff, they'd be like, "But what the fuck is that?" Like,
but did you have friends that you'd listen to this kind of stuff?
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. That little friend group, and definitely I spent so many lunchtimes in the music halls, just like. Yeah, listening to different music, classic rock and stuff like that with my little friend group. Yeah.
All right, cool. Next song?
Cool. Oh, John Mayer, Gravity, yeah. As I was saying, he's a direct descendant, a great example of someone who followed in the vein of Stevie Ray Vaughan and his Texas blues, is what that kind of genre of blues would be called. And John Mayer took that and gave it, I guess, a pop sheen and put it to the wider audience. And yeah, alongside a very nice packaging of a attractive white guitar player that sings nicely, writes nice songs, and is very much a marketable thing. So but in amongst all that, he's, in his own regard, in himself, he's a fantastic guitar player, incredible guitarist. He could well have been just a pop guy who kind of sings nice songs and writes nice songs, and that would have been incredible. But the guy is an incredible guitar player, taking inspiration from Stevie Ray Vaughan, from Jimi Hendrix, and many, many others, from the blues vein, some jazz. Fantastic player, amazing modern guitarist that I really, really respect on electric guitar. Yeah,
cool.
Great songwriting. Roll Me Don, Invisible Chains live. So specifically this track, it's not my favourite track of his, but the live version is on Spotify. I think it's a live from New York City concert. He speaks before he gets into the main track. And actually what he's doing is he's playing the groove on the guitar and holding down the groove while he's just quite casually talking to the audience. Immediately, just on a very basic level, I find that incredibly difficult to hold the groove, to be playing a groove and then talk to the audience in between. I nearly always have to stop. So it's something that I'm working on, but Roll just does it naturally, incredibly. But he also, throughout the beginning of this track, he mentions that there's a groove that he was working on, and a lot of people assume that he's just kind of talented. You know, he's very talented at what he does. He can pick up a guitar and play it immediately. And in the beginning of this, he describes a thing that he was working on where he thought he had it down, and then he went to play it, and it completely failed. It fell apart, and he needed way more time in the oven to practice and to spend days and days and days practicing it to get it working. And it was actually a reggae groove that he's describing. But yeah, it's very, very humbling, because someone of that talent kind of saying, you know what, this sure, it's a little bit of talent in there, you know, but it's a lot of grind. It's a lot of hours of practice. And if I don't put the practice in, even I fail at this. So it's him kind of laying at that, and then he proceeds to go into the track, play it correctly, and it's amazing. And his words are so humbling, and the way he communicates to the audience is so natural. And I like thinking of that track when I'm interacting with audiences, such as at So Far Sounds, where I want to foster Roll Me Don levels of of comfort and ease of communication.
Interaction.
Yeah.
You've been doing this for quite a while, right? And if you would think about 21-year-old, 25-year-old, you're turning 35 tomorrow, your past younger self, what kind of, motivation push would you go and give him? I think especially during times when he was like, what the fuck am I doing? Do I want to do this? What would you kind of hear, knowing what you know now? Obviously you've traveled lots of places, you've been to Vetlas, and you get to do this as for a living, and it's what you always wanted to do. But I'm sure it hasn't been always a smooth sailing to get to where you are. So what would you kind of put in a message in a bottle and send to your younger self?
There was never a point where I questioned it, is what I'd say, but so it wouldn't be like the motivation I need to push myself to like carry it on, because I knew that that's what I wanted to be doing. But it would probably be to please people less, to worry about, is this like packaged nicely enough for this audience or that audience or this. I'd say worry less about that, and just be yourself. Be natural to what you are. My best friend Anthony, he once saw me at a So Far Sounds, and he said, "Man, you're doing good. You're doing okay." He's not one for high praise, and that's why I value him a lot. He'll when something's bad, he'll tell you. Yeah. He said, "You need to be weirder. Like, you need to be you. Be weirder, because you're weird. So let that come across." So I still hold that in my thoughts when I'm doing So Far Sounds now. I try and just kind of be more natural on stage, and that's what probably I'd say to the 25-year-old me. Maybe don't be afraid to just be yourself on stage. I think that takes a while to develop that comfort.
Yeah.
And 25-year-old me would have been busking a lot. I'd be playing on the streets a lot, around Europe, around Istanbul, in Dublin, and around London. That gives you a lot of discipline in some ways, but it doesn't give you that much discipline when you're, or that much experience when you're put in a So Far Soundsy context where you've got a really quiet audience who are there to see you. Because when you're busking, you're used to an audience that isn't there to see you. And of course, you adapt to that and you get very, very confident in that context. That confidence does carry over, but the experience of the different contexts takes a little while to build up. So yeah, there's a different skill set, I would say, in when your audience is there purely to listen to you and how you communicate with them there, which I think Roll Me Don kind of absolutely nails when you hear him, especially on Invisible Chains.
Yeah, having that kind of interaction, the kind of ease of like communication and showing your personality more. And I think that for me, that's one thing that I think is different from when I saw you perform, right? You were there, you were doing your thing, you seemed super serious, and I was like, okay, cool, this guy knows what the hell he's doing, right?
Interesting.
But you're like, the level of interaction, I think it's because you are playing, right? You're playing, whereas Story and Jackson were singing, and therefore there's lots more interaction for them to do because they can see us and we can see them, whereas you were literally looking and like you're trying to do what you need to do, but you have essentially another person you have to control on your lap, you know, when it's not like just all you have to think about is your body, you know what I mean?
Maybe interesting.
It's like all they have to think about is like their body and something coming out of their body, whereas you have this inanimate object that you have to make sound good. So I feel like there's like a wall, I guess, from between you and the audience that is a lot harder to break than when you are a vocalist, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
And that's, I think, for me as an audience member, that was my kind of experience in that interaction.
Interesting. Okay, I worry in my head. I worry when I perform that I'm, number one, closing my eyes too much. Okay. Because I find that I naturally close my eyes when I'm performing, and it's a very natural thing. It's me in a zone basically. But I'm trying to stop doing that as much and make more eye contact with the audience members, even fleetingly, while I do that. And number two, I try and keep my back straight when I'm performing, just because I'm turning 35 tomorrow, and lower back pain is a thing after carrying amplifiers and guitars all your life. Yeah. So yeah, if you're getting to a gig and you're kind of carrying stuff and carrying the amplifier, carrying your backpack. You mentioned about my big ass backpack. And then you sit down for the gig, and you're going to be 2 hours
like that.
It's not so good, and also physically it doesn't look so attractive or confident on stage. Let's say
if you're hunched.
Yeah, and I think that visibility, that kind of vibe, I think it exudes from you, and so in yourself, if you kind of sit up and kind of own the space a bit more with your own back.
It has,
for me, it increases.
It does translate. And the confidence, I guess, it does, you know. Yeah. It's funny you say about you closing your eyes. When I was in the 7th grade, it was during art class. And our teacher, it was a Friday, he asked, like, whoever has a talent, come, like, you know. At the time, I was like, I had an inkling I could sing, but I never actually did it properly. Or like did it in front of people, except like at home with my family. And I decided that I was going to go sing in front of the class. And I did, but my eyes were closed the entire time. Like that. And it wasn't because like I was shy. It was just what came natural to me, is that I just closed my eyes and I'm in, you know, the zone. And I sang, and cause it was me putting myself out there for the first kind of time. And then I was singing, what's that? I Want to Know What Love Is, Mariah Carey.
Okay.
And I opened my eyes at the end of the song, and everyone is laughing, right? In that head, in the time, I was like, am I a terrible singer? Is that why everyone is laughing? Am I bad? No, it's just because my eyes are closed. And they're just like, why are eyes closed? From the beginning of the song to the very end, the eyes were just closed. And they were like, what are you doing? Okay. But it was one of those instances where, like, if I was a less confident person, I would have never sang a day in my life after that. Because just, like, you put yourself out there, and then it just doesn't go well, right? And I was just like, it is what it is. And I stuck to it, funny enough. And yeah, I'm glad that didn't derail me from singing. But it was one of those things that, like, even going into high school, my friends still make fun of me because in high school I was in every single choir imaginable. I was in, like, every single one.
Right.
And I would still close my eyes. My friends would still make fun of me. And I don't know if it's something that people ever, like, get out of. Maybe when you become more of a professional, maybe vocalist, where you have to, like, use your eye contact to continue with your audience. You don't close your eyes as much. But yeah.
That's interesting. It goes into number one. It's really cool. If that's your natural vibe for that, then I would say let it be. You know, but on the other side, there's, apart from learning your instrument, apart from learning how to discipline your voice and technically play well, etc. But whatever your instrument is, be it a saxophone or be it your voice, whatever. There's then the meta of that. Of okay, when you're on stage, how are you presenting yourself? Because if you're performing, sure, the technical ability is a major thing, but your performing ability is also a whole thing that people maybe don't realize so much. And yeah, maybe as a singer, I think it is, or as a musician in general, as a performer, I think it's good to make eye contact with the audience and to have some of that communication back and forth. And that's a whole learning thing in itself, and it's a whole ability. And pairing that with playing,
it just is a lot.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So Eva, we're going to go into kind of wrapping up, and I'm going to ask you a few questions, and the first answer in your mind, go for it, right? First question, what is a song you wish you could hear again for the first time?
Redemption Song by Bob Marley.
Oh, yes. Why?
Just, the lyrics are so deep, the more you listen to it, but listening to it the first time and having things click in there from a cultural background perspective, historical perspective, as just one man singing a song kind of perspective. The production on the recording is so rootsy. Like I know the track so well, and I know what emotion the track gives out. But to be able to listen to that in a quiet atmosphere and just be with myself and listen to that for the first time, I think. I'd love to do that as an adult, especially because the first time I heard that was as a teenager, and maybe I didn't know so much about the world in some contexts, or I didn't have some life experiences, etc. But as an adult, to listen to that, knowing what I know now, culturally, emotionally, historically, I think would be quite interesting.
It's a beautiful song.
It's peak songwriting.
I grew up on Bob Marley with my dad.
Oh man, there's few artists in the world, really few, I think, where 99.9% of people will say, like, you can't deny that's incredible songwriting and incredible artist. But Bob Marley's just like
he never misses. Like there's no Bob Marley song I can be like, no.
Yeah.
Like each and every one of them, I felt like has a time and a place when you listen to it, and you're just like, damn, cool. Second question, what is a song that you would dedicate to your Turkish grandmother?
It probably would be Do You Have a Daughter, which it's kind of written a bit about her in an extent, in a way. So Turkish families traditionally, of which I'm not suffering from generally, because my Turkish family, my Turkish half is not particularly traditional, but my grandmother is. There are points where she tries to pair me up with a Turkish girl over in Istanbul, despite me living in England. And Do You Have a Daughter is me kind of thinking how a conversation goes when she meets a new person, a new family, a new friend or something, and she learns that they have a daughter, a single daughter of marrying age. She's kind of, do you have a daughter? I have a grandson, that kind of thing. So I would dedicate that to her.
Has she succeeded in matching up with anyone?
She's tried. Okay. Let's say, yeah.
And she'll never stop trying. I'm sure it's like another mission. She's like,
yeah, totally, yeah, totally. And if it pleases her to try and pair me with beautiful Turkish girls that are completely inappropriate for me because they live in Istanbul, but they are lovely nonetheless. And sure, I'll go and meet them when I have like dinner with my grandma or something. Sure, yeah, it's not such a bad place to be.
Love that. Next question: if you were stuck on a desert island and you could only play 3 albums, that's it, what 3 are we picking?
Okay, we mentioned it earlier, but Santana Supernatural. It just is such a formative album for me, and it reminds me of a certain time of my life. And if it was a desert island, to me that indicates sun, and to me Santana Supernatural is Latin. It's all Latin rock, lots of Latin stuff. So to me that would be great for that.
And what is your favorite song on that album?
Oh, probably maybe Corazón Espinado, maybe Maria Maria. Actually, which I wouldn't have necessarily picked 10 years ago, but I don't know, just something. Maria Maria's got such groove. The fact that you can just do that and I can just do that,
yeah, exactly.
and we know exactly
what we're doing.
Yeah, that groove, and such a simple groove. Like the only other thing to me that is on the level of that groove-wise is maybe Superstition, and maybe Heard It Through the Grapevine. Dun, 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 dun. Like just yeah, so much groove. Yeah, and completely different styles, but like so much groove. I think in talking to you, I learned that so much of my preferences are groove based.
I think when I'm doing this and prepping the set, I listen to all your songs, and they would like that's kind of the thread that goes.
Maybe so. Yeah. 2 more albums. Let me have a think. I think maybe I would say any live album, but I think it's live at the Olympia of James Brown. I think I would pick. Yeah. And including all of his interactions with his bandmates, which like where he cues them up and he says kind of like, "Give me 4, give me 8 more," like that kind of thing.
I love that.
I love it. I love like the idea of him as like a circus ringleader, and he's got his whole orchestra. He's the conductor, sweating, pouring out of him, doing all his moves. And
that man, you could sweat,
Just the power that dude had, and the funkiness of his band. I think that would definitely help.
And what song would you say?
Probably Sex Machine. Yeah, just so funky. And I think that would keep my motivation up in this desert island, definitely. And maybe something for the evening would. Let me think. I can picture the album cover. It's D'Angelo, but I don't know what the name of the album is. I want to say Voodoo. It might be Voodoo something. Not Voodoo Child, but I think it's called Voodoo. Something neo soul-y, R&B-ish from D'Angelo.
And what song on there would you?
Maybe Spanish Joint, which is again so fucking groovy, so groovy. That's definitely that's an evening playlist track, like peak evening playlist. I'm gonna say evening. I mean sexy time playlist with partner, definitely.
Of course, D'Angelo is always included.
By default.
Those guys knew what they were doing.
Yes,
they just knew what they were writing, and they knew what they were singing.
Yeah,
bless them.
And that groove on Spanish Joint, that's an example of again where it escalates, similar to This Masquerade. Actually, I never made that parallel. That's really interesting. Yeah, Spanish Joint is a bit like a modern implementation of This Masquerade. Really, really interesting. Just the musicianship, the arrangement, the rhythms, both vocally and instrumentally used on that are just like first time I heard that I was like, I'm hooked. I'm hooked on this. This is going to be on repeat a lot of times now. And then I'll try and learn the guitar parts. They are technically not that difficult, but rhythmically they're like, you're like, what do you put it in there? That's so not where I
used to go.
But that is so in the pocket. That is exactly where it needs to go. So amazing. Yeah.
Cool. Your last question is, when you leave this realm of the planet, what song would you want your loved ones to play to kind of send you off or to remember you by?
Wow. Interesting. I don't want to say it again, but I think it would be quite fitting. Maybe Exodus.
Okay.
Yeah, it kind of it hits the kind of mark there. Maybe I think I would want it to be kind of something upbeat. Maybe Superstition would kind of work as well thematically. I think that would kind of yeah. And a song about superstition to me fits for for death and going into the next realm, whatever that might be. And if not, then maybe. No, I think I would leave it there. I think they're quite good options. Yeah.
Okay,
I'd
cool.
say that. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. I think we are done.
Cool.
So where can people find you?
Cool. You can find me at Jonjan Official on all reputable social media. At jonjanofficial.com, and on Spotify I am Jonjan, Jonjan.
Yeah. Guys, go on. It's first out with strings attached, because that's just my personal favorite. And you can kind of go down from there. And like I said, I think you need to see it to believe it, right? I think when you're listening to it on Spotify, you could think that there are other people around. They really aren't. It's just him. So go on to Spotify, YouTube, or even his Instagram, and watch how the man works. You will thank me later. And if you liked this, please like, comment, subscribe, all those nice things. So I know that you're there and that I'm not just here talking to myself. Even if I was, it's fine, but just like say hi so I know, you know what I mean. And if you also want to submit your own soundtracks, the link is in the show notes, or you can come and talk to me on Instagram. Super active there. And tell me about the songs that you love. And even if you don't want to send them to me, that's fine. Just sit down and reflect on the music that kind of played a part in where you are right now and that helped you through life. I've been Tendai.
I've been Jonjan.
And this has been Sountracks. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank
Bye.
you. Take care.